podcast this week. This week, I have the most beautiful guest today on my show, Connie Miller. And we are having a special episode because we know this week can elicit a lot of different feelings for a lot of different people. It's Thanksgiving week, and everyone says Happy Thanksgiving, but it might not be very happy. It may elicit stress. It may elicit grief, a whole bunch, a host of feelings that you may have. And so, what we wanted to do today is kind of start the week off on a really bright light and give you some hope and gratitude and love to lead you into this week. So, thank you so much, Connie Miller. She is the founder of Happy Nest Coaching, and I have her book. This is a book that I got that she wrote, and it's a mindfulness and gratitude journal for kids. But when you look through it, if you don't have kids, there are still a lot of interesting questions that you can ask yourself. So, Connie, thank you so much for being here today. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what you're passionate about?
Hi, Gina. Thank you so much for having me. I am Connie Miller, obviously, and I am the founder of Happy Nest Coaching. Previous to coaching parents, I was a fourth grade teacher for about 10 years. What really drove me to coaching was kind of that idea of not just having a lifelong impact on the child, but on the entire family. Parents would come to me and say, "Oh, I don't have enough time, and this is so hard." And, that kind of struck a chord. And then having my own kids, I was like, oh my goodness, this is hard. I can command an entire classroom of 30 kids, but one-year-olds has got me kind of with my back against the wall. So I just kind of started thinking that there has to be a better way, right? Like there has to be some way to make this easier. So that brought me to where I am now, where I work primarily with high achieving parents, career driven, have always been career driven, but they have these wonderful kids and these amazing families, and they struggle every day to find time to do all the things. And of course we can't always do all the things, but I really work to help them find that calm and that connection where you start to create the cooperation and the teamwork, and then you can find the joy in the little moments. It's always about quality over quantity. And so, and being authentic and communicating our needs. And, one of the funniest things that I think happens is, when I tell parents to, if you're using your phone in front of your kids, sometimes you just have to. But if you say, hey, I'm going to write a text message. This is a tool, not a toy. They stop seeing it as something that's a toy and that it's taking you away from them. Oh, I'm using my mom. Oh, she's so cool. She works and she can still be with me and she's playing with me. She just has to send this little, message to an employee or a, coworker or whatever it is, so that then she can come back and be present with me. And so it's just about those little moments, and we can get to a point where we feel very at peace and successful in both facets of life.
That's beautiful. I mean, I think that that's one thing that is so important to keep in mind is being connected. How many times have we been present with people in the room and our minds are like a mile away? And, you think about Thanksgiving and this week of Thanksgiving, it's like you want to be present, but there's feelings that could hold you back, in that moment, whether it's stress of being around family or the stress of not having family or the stress of wanting to feel loved and you don't feel loved. So there's all these like mixed emotions that you could feel this week that create this idea that Thanksgiving should be like a Hallmark movie. And it's just not, and you're trying to like reach that pinnacle of like, I want it to be like the Hallmark movie, and it's not. So I know like you had mentioned to me, Thanksgiving week, there has been, times in your life where, that you have had a roadblock that have kind of kept you from this idea of being fully connected. Can you share kind of that and like how you encountered and then how you got over or how you continue to move through that, those hurdles in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually you just said a word that, is one of the ones I try and really get my clients to break free of that word should, right?
Mm,
That is actually what generally prevents us from being present. I
mm,
should respond to this, I should do this, and so our brain kind of goes all over the place. Um, and so, and that idea too, you know, when we're caught up in what we should do, we lose the ability to reimagine what it could be. And you spoke to a time in particular at Thanksgiving that we as a family, myself in particular, hit a very physical roadblock. In November of 2022, we were coming back from a trip to Costa Rica. It was our first big family trip ever post COVID. And on the way back, I started feeling really funny in my back. By the time we were on the ground in Denver, I was kind of just feeling really fatigued and increasingly weird. Um, Fast forward several hours, and I ended up having a spinal stroke. And
mm,
it put me in the hospital overnight through Thanksgiving. My kids woke up the next morning with me not being at the house, very confused. But the interesting thing is, I think when you hit rock bottom, I mean, I wasn't able to move. I still had function in my limbs, but I wasn't able to move my hands or my fingers. And so it
wow.
was scary, but I remember this kind of sense of calm. And
Mm,
uh, it's like when you hit rock bottom, you kind of can ground into it because you're at the bottom, and then you're able to look up and see more clearly. And it's kind of like one of those things like, well, I have kids, I have these responsibilities, and also it is what it is. Like me getting super upset about this,
mhm,
spiraling is only going to create a bigger roadblock, right? So, that Thanksgiving was, despite the circumstances, of course I miss my kids, but I got to spend Thanksgiving solo in the hospital, unfortunately, but with my
mm,
husband and my in-laws on FaceTime, and it was really special. And I think because of the circumstances, everything was different. There was no
mm,
tradition. And so we were actually able to be present and be fully in that space of feeling gratitude that I was even alive,
mm,
feeling gratitude that we were at a wonderful hospital and there could be progress. And the next day I recall this doctor came in and I said, well, I just want you to know, like, my plan is to ski this winter.
uh-huh.
And he didn't laugh, but he laughed with all the other expressions, right? He was like, okay, so remember you can't walk. And I was like,
Mm,
yeah, I know. But like, I could totally ski this winter, right? And he was like, well, I mean, it's kind of more about like if you'll ever ski again,
mm,
not when. And I kind of looked at him and I was like, that doesn't really compute. And it didn't. And 2 months later, I snowboarded. 3 months later, I skied. And it took a lot of work, but I never doubted it, right? Like I never doubted that that would be the outcome. And of course, with something physical like that, that's not always the reality. But even if you don't reach the highest goal and the highest, you know, aspiration, you land somewhere among the stars, right?
mm,
And you're not like what is that expression? You shoot for the moon and you land among the stars. And it's that same idea, right? Like my mom has always said, circumstances rarely meet expectations.
mm,
Embrace what you get. And though that can sound a little like with less hope because you're like embrace what you get, but at the same time, it means you get to embrace what you want and what
mm,
your new goal is and what your new idea is because you don't know what you necessarily want until you get there or how wonderful it can be. And this journey post spinal stroke has given me a totally new perspective. I feel like I have these two birthdays, July 22nd and November 22nd. It's like my life before and my ideas and my determination and all those things were one thing. And then the growth and the mindset that I have now after
mm,
my second birthday,
mm,
it's a new life and it's a new lease. And so, even in the hardest times, we can find those moments and
Mhm.
reimagine what life could look like in the best way despite circumstances.
That's so beautiful, Connie. I mean, honestly, to have this idea of having multiple birthdays, because everyone's going to have hurdles in their life and your life will never be the same after them,
Mhm.
but it's really how you adjust and look for inspiration for growth. And I just finished my book last night. I wrote my final chapter, and one of the research studies I showed, one of the most predictive measures of well-being is to always learn and to always be
Mhm.
learning. And there's research studies that show that hope and love and the love of learning is a predictive measure of well-being. And so this idea that you have of like being in the hospital and thinking of how you're going to learn and how you're going to move forward is why it was why you're as great as you are and how happy you are and all the things that you do for others because of that particular measure of wanting to move forward. So what is it for you that keeps you happy or wanting to move forward every day? Like what has it been? I mean, because I know that journey was so hard and that Thanksgiving really your life was changed forever. So what is it? What is it that drives you to move forward?
I mean, I don't think I've ever really lost the zest for play, and all humans need to play because that's where we find our curiosity, and
Mm,
play is you know generally referenced for children. However, adults do it too, and that's when we find our moments of curiosity, for it is the play is the language of learning.
mm,
So we get playful and like, even when I talk to my clients, I'll be like, all right, like let's play with this.
mhm,
What would it look like if, you know, we totally reimagined your morning and it wasn't this like long to-do list and like there wasn't all this chaos? What
mhm,
would that feel like? And so when you get people's imaginations going, they look for the nuances, right? Just because it's always been done one way doesn't mean that that's the way it's always going to be. And I know you have, but it's really interesting when you watch like actual neurons being formed in the brain as you're learning, and
mhm,
it sparks that curiosity because it's no longer just the same path. New
mhm,
roads and new bridges are being built all the time.
mhm,
And that's why our elders are so wise, right? They never don't learn something every single day. And
mhm,
so it's the same thing for me. Like every time I coach a parent, I'm like, oh, okay, I need to reimagine this.
mhm,
How could this help somebody else in the future? How could, we reimagine the way that their child enters school so that there isn't this, hardship on disconnection? And then the other piece of that is it's not about always adapting and on the fly. It's really about simplifying and grounding into like our values and our goals and our dreams and sharing those in total authenticity with our kids too, or coworkers and the people around us. I mean, this isn't just about parent child, because it's
mhm.
about, I mean, whether we're a parent or not, we have a relationship with being parented. um,
Mhm,
and those are the things that come out too, right? Especially at holidays.
mhm,
you know you have traditions, Scott had traditions, you have traditions, you have an as adult, you have a tradition, like all of these things, and that's where that idea of should come in, right? Well, we've always done it this way, well, we've always done it that way. And that Thanksgiving that I spent in the hospital, none of that, all of it was out the window, and it was still magical.
mhm,
Actually, because all the shroud of all the other shoulds left, we were able to truly just enjoy, those moments and not be anticipating the next tradition that needed to be completed. And
mhm.
um, just that idea of like being playful and asking questions and getting creative with what we do with those that we love the most, and asking the questions, right? Like it's so easy for us to forget to like you know ask, what is your most favorite tradition? And the ironic part is most of the time it's not the turkey or the present. It's you know watching the parade, or something kind of really like simple that
Mm.
actually mirrors stuff that we do every day, but because it's around a holiday, it holds a different value.
Absolutely. The thing is, like, what you just described is being present, being present in the simple things and seeing the good. It can be a good day when you see the simple things and
Mhm.
appreciate them. So I love that. And
Mhm.
this idea of curiosity and what that means, it doesn't mean that you have to invent something brand new. It's just to
Right.
ask a question and be engaged and thinking about and being reflective about what you're doing in that moment. Because when you're doing the should, you're actually creating anxiety.
Oh,
That's
and
like when you
shame.
say in shame, like you should be doing this. It creates stress and anxiety, and
Mhm.
ultimately disappointment because you have
Mhm.
this idea of what it should be, and that may not be what it is. And so, just appreciating the time that you have for what it is so important. So, Connie, did you learn this somewhere? Is this something that like you read in a book or you studied, or was there something like really foundational that kind of changed your view on this, or that you could share?
I think it's honestly kind of like an amalgamation, right? Like,
Mhm.
I played sports all growing up. I played Division One lacrosse at University of Delaware. Um, and there's a lot of physical challenges, of course, with doing something like that. But I'd say the mental load of playing a Division One sport is even more significant. um, and I know you know that. But I and then post college, I got my master's in educational psychology, so of course there's that foundational bit there in the academia. But then teaching was it. I saw these kids and they'd come in, and I would always call them my kids, which I'm sure people around me knew that I didn't have my own children, but I would, it created some confusion. But they uh, they would come in and you'd have them kind of for this such a short amount of time, right?
Mhm.
You would spend 8 hours a day with them, 7 hours a day, and then they'd be off. And sometimes you'd see them again and sometimes you wouldn't. And then I'd have their parents coming in and asking all these questions, and it really just kind of led me down this road of being a teacher was so fulfilling, and at the same time there was a piece that was still missing for me.
Mm.
Like there's that piece, that jump to where like how could I not only teach these kids 4th grade, but really have this kind of profound
Mm.
effect on their lives and their families' lives. And it really came down to, looking back and realizing how lucky I was in my family of origin, the family I grew up in. And I in my family, we joke that first cousins are siblings and second cousins are first cousins because
Mm.
we are so close with
Mm.
all of my first and second cousins. And, if my mom doesn't answer, my dad doesn't answer on first call, I'm calling one of my aunts or uncles in a heartbeat,
Mm.
and anticipating the same level of support on the other end. So it's, it really goes both ways. But I realized how lucky I was in that. And it's not necessarily about having a big family, but it's about having those connections, right? I know
Mhm.
scientifically it takes one secure attachment
Mhm.
to all the benefits.
Mhm. Yeah,
Just one.
absolutely.
So it doesn't, you don't need to have 100 secure attachments to have that and to
Mhm.
feel that. And that goes both ways. It's for parents to kids and kids to parents, husbands and wives, friends, colleagues, um, but
Mhm.
building that connection, because I always say to parents, commanding a child to do something just elicits compliance. There's
Mhm.
no connection there. It's very robotic. But if we start to connect with them and explain why, and um, then we elicit cooperation. So it's like being the super successful CEO of your family.
Mhm.
Good CEOs inspire, bad
Mhm.
CEOs dictate. And so, like, which one do you kind of want to be? And that resonates. Like I said, most of my clients are kind of high achievers.
Mhm.
So they do feel a lot of, what you alluded to, that guilt and that shame and the super stress, because they're like, how can I be so successful in my career? And I come home and I feel the guilt. I feel the shame. I I don't feel like I know what I'm doing. And that lack of confidence can be super jarring, particularly to people that are used to being successful.
So impactful. I mean, so impactful, because we all have times where we feel disappointment like that. And we feel like we've let somebody down, especially if you're high achieving, or if
Right.
you have this idea that it should be a certain way, kind of thinking through that. So, Connie, what does winning mean to you? You're a Division I athlete. Like, if I ask you, what does winning mean? What does that mean to you?
Winning means walking off the field and knowing that you left your all.
Aw,
That
I
you
love
tried all the
that.
things, and that's winning, right? Like
Uh-huh.
you did your best,
Mhm.
and that you did all the things that you could do, and just whatever the outcome is, because there's so much honesty in that, right? So like, even if there's disappointment, there's also honesty, because we can hold two truths at once, right? And parents, like I said, they feel this guilt and shame, and then we kind of, because it hurts so bad, and we all do this in lots of, we kind of like laugh about either not working out or doing something like this, and we kind of diminish the value of those feelings. And so instead of, kind of facing them head on, and so, if you come off the field and you feel good about what you tried to do, and even if it wasn't successful, you're still winning, because you have more information than you did when you walked on the field.
Absolutely. You're always learning.
Yeah,
And that's
right? You're never gonna not know what you just learned that day.
absolutely. I love that. The thing is, if you go out and do your best and you show up and you learn something, that's critical. I started this podcast, Connie, because I had a few drivers that I did this research study, and I asked them what they wanted to learn about, and I had a few reach out to me and say that they didn't have a passion for learning, and they said they lost their passion. And so if you had somebody come to you, like an overachieving parent or somebody that you were coaching, that said, Connie, I'm not creative.
Mhm.
I'm at my rope's end. I feel like a failure. I don't have a passion for learning.
Mhm.
Um, how would you help them, or what would you say to them, or what would you say to someone listening today that's feeling that way?
I mean, I think that, the biggest thing is just start by giving yourself permission to feel, right?
Mhm.
Like, when we try and like suffocate our feelings away, or diminish their value, that's when they kind of start to overtake us. And so the idea of just, I love the thought of, what's the next best decision?
Mm.
Don't make it too big. Don't make it too far. Just what's the best decision I can make in this moment? And the idea of that is just momentum, right? Just move forward.
Mhm.
Take the next step. Get curious with yourself. Whether it's curious about, where is this thought coming from?
Mm.
Why does it feel that way? What is the story that I'm telling myself to get to where I am? And then also just, I was alluding to you earlier that I really, it's this idea of like, we don't know the supports that are out there, right? We remember how we were parented. We know what the universe says about it, particularly, right now there's a lot of shaming, mom shaming and all these things, because we're doing it differently. But if we really look back, every generation has done it differently, because every generation has a new set of circumstances. So it's not just us as parents, it's when we, forget to adapt. You don't need to be a creative person to move forward, right? To, say, wow, like, we're on this journey together, to be vulnerable. So I would even say it's like less about um, being creative. It's more about being willing to be vulnerable.
Mm,
to be, not have kind of this I need to know it all mentality.
mhm,
And I really want parents in particular to know that, there's a lot more help out there beyond, a 15-second, Instagram reel that tells you how you quote unquote should do something. Um,
mm,
because it doesn't apply directly to your life. Every family, every person is so vastly different with all of their own experiences. And all of those experiences are valid. So, if someone were to come to me and say that they really, were at their wits' end, they didn't know what they were going to do, they just were trying to survive parenting, with a wish and a prayer and some crossed fingers. I just start by asking them, is that what you want?
mm.
And as I say, presumably they're going to say no because that's not a comfortable place to be. Um,
Right.
and then that's where we get to start, that idea of like being rock bottom. And when you're rock bottom, you're grounded and you can look up and see where you want to go. And then so what's the next small, meaningful step we can take?
Yeah, just breathe. I mean,
Yeah.
try to get through this week, right? And breathe and take it step by step. Last week I had Brad Arson, who
Mhm.
is the award-winning author of the book Humankind. It's such a beautiful book.
Mhm.
And he talked about his teaching. And last week he asked me this question he wanted me to ask you. He said, Connie, what are the best ways you've seen for families to really connect and engage over the holidays? What would you say to
Um,
Brad?
so I thought, thank you for, he was amazing, first of all.
Mhm. Yeah.
And second of all, it actually kind of highlights what occurs, right? Like he lives and breathes in this space, and still, as parents and within our families, I mean, you mentioned earlier about your nephew. Like we all have these kind of intergenerational relationships, and for some reason they immediately confuse us, right? And we're like,
Mhm.
oh, I know all these things, but then it's hard to translate it. So, it goes back to that presence, just
Mhm.
focusing on the presence and not perfection. Laugh at the imperfections, laugh when the pie falls in the middle and it's not cooked all the way through. Um, Small traditions make a big impact. Just create space for the unstructured time. Sleep in a little bit longer, stay in your pajamas a little bit longer. Um, do your best not to overschedule. And then, there are kind of three very simple things that I think would really hit for parents in particular, which is kind of a good trick too, because as parents, we often forget all the little traditions that mean so much to our kids. And so I always ask my kids what their favorite traditions are. And so I can be like, oh, yeah, I forgot that we always do that.
Mhm.
And it's always the funny things, right? We always, I don't know, like watch Charlie Brown Thanksgiving at the Wednesday before, which my daughter told me yesterday. And I was like, we do? Okay, putting that down on my list that we need to do that. And I'm thinking all the big picture things like, what are we gonna wear? What are we gonna make? And how's it gonna look? And so just like that presence, the simplifying it, enjoying little moments, back to what I said at the beginning, it's all about, quality over quantity. We
Mhm.
don't need to create these big elaborate things. And then second would be is to give our kids a why. They don't understand why they have to dress up beyond because we said so. But if we kind of get to the values behind dressing up, it's about, showing respect and intention and preparing. And as we prepare and get into nicer clothes than we normally wear, we put ourselves in a different mindset. And this is true across the board. I'll joke with my kids, you don't see a doctor wearing their ski suit to your appointment
Mhm.
because they're prepared by, dressing for the part in something that's appropriate for what they're doing. Um, and then the other one is just a really simple idea of asking them at the end of the day about
Mhm.
their day. What can they reflect on? This is a particular time of gratitude and giving, and what is one way you saw that today?
Mhm.
Um, and you
That's
can do it
beautiful.
with a rosebud thorn. And so just kind of keeping the idea of like the simplicity of like curiosity and presence, asking your kids what are their favorite things,
Mhm.
uh, and then giving them a why when we have to do something that's completely out of the ordinary. And honestly, it's good to remind ourselves too, why are we holding on so tight to this obscure tradition
Mm,
that maybe doesn't mean a whole lot to us anymore? And would it be a good time to let go of it?
mm.
Or do we want to find a why that we want to hold on to it? And then in the end, practicing that moment of gratitude with our kids, which and encouraging us to do the same.
Mm, it's
And
beautiful.
each day, moving forward. And we all have things that come up uh, during the holidays that ironically remind us a lot of our hardships,
Mm,
uh, and things that we feel like we're missing, or didn't get to, or to-do lists, and it can be so overwhelming.
mm.
Um, but back to the core of what it means and why we're all there.
Yeah, asking ourselves the why. So important. Thank you so much for that. And Brad, if you're listening, definitely let us know what you think. Next week, I actually have Kevin Smith on my
Mhm.
podcast, and Kevin is the founder and chief kindness chaser of Kindness Worldwide. And I've been working with Kevin for several months on his initiative and spreading kindness across the globe. And he's just an amazing person. And that's not his day job, which, like all of us, like have multiple things we're passionate about. He's a wealth management advisor, so he has dual roles. So, Connie, what question should we ask Kevin next week?
Well, I am super curious about how he, on a day-to-day basis, navigates that insane paradox between the data-driven world of finance and the superstructure, and then integrating, being deeply human,
Mm,
and how the value-driven world around being, an emotional being, and that
mm.
human experience, and how does he, you know bring those two worlds together in a meaningful way.
That's great. I can't wait to see what he says. Connie, I want you to leave us with some final words for our podcast today. Give people hope, give people love, give people kindness, and tell them where they can find you. Tell them what you have going on. I know you have a new course coming out, and where they can find you and learn about more about your coaching services.
Yeah, I'm super excited for 2025. I kind of have this, you know, launching into kind of the next realm of
Mhm.
coaching and bringing services to all different levels. So you said I have my course coming out um, in the next couple weeks, and then today actually I'm dropping the 2024 gift guide for kids 10 and under currently. So you can come to my
Oh,
website, which I know is linked, I think, in the notes, and check that out. And then we're going to be doing some webinars, some live coaching, hopefully some membership type things. But it's really just coming and checking us out, realizing that parent coaching is out there, right? Like
mhm.
it's there's support for all different areas um, of life. And then I'm also going to be publishing the parents version of the gratitude journal to go hand in hand.
Yay!
So come check us out, join our email list. I don't send a ton of things, but when cool things come out, I mean, when the Surgeon General put out that statement about parenting burnout, uh,
Mhm,
of course that hits home, but it's the real thing. So
mhm.
find the support you need, and hopefully it's at happiness, because we got a lot of cool things going on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Connie. I hope everyone out there really does take a break this holiday season. Give yourself grace, give yourself kindness, and we'll see you back next